Om Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jivanam Kavibhiriritam Kalmashapaham Sravanamangalam Srimadatam Bhuvi Grananti Ye Bhurida Jana. So in the last class, we were trying to enumerate the different types of bhakti. And while doing so, we've started with a discussion on the preparatory bhakti. There's two types of bhakti, the preparatory bhakti and the spontaneous bhakti, the sadhana and the sadhya. The sadhya bhakti is called raga anuga bhakti. Raga anuga means the bhakti which is followed by raga, this attachment towards God. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, that just the way sugar candy is not to be considered as sugar. Why is to say that? That generally sugar creates acidity, but in Ayurveda, the sugar candy, the crystallized sugar, is used as a medicine for acidity. It acts as antacid. So that's why I used to say that sugar candy is not to be considered as sugar, as sweet. Why I used to say that? That similarly attachment towards God is not to be considered as attachment. Because all other attachment binds, attachment to God liberates. It's just the opposite in effect. So, that's the bhakti which we were speaking of in the broadly categorized as preparatory, and the raganuga. Raganuga we will come to the discussion much later. Today, we will enter into the discussion of the preparatory bhakti. As we said, there are 9 practices for the preparatory bhakti. They are the Shravana, Kirtana, Smarana, Pada Sevana, Archana, Vandana, Dasya, Sakhya and Atmanivedana. So this is the 9 practice. Shravana is hearing, Kirtana chanting, Smarana remembering, constantly remembering the Lord, His divine plays, His teachings, Smarana, Pada Sevana, the service to Ishvara's feet. That's the literal meaning. But actually, the Lord's feet covers the entire universe. By 3 steps, He covered the entire universe. The story is there in Bhagavatam as the Vamana avatar. In 3 steps, He covered the entire universe. So, this, when we say Pada Sevana, it means serving the creation, knowing for certain that it is just the feet of the Lord. It is the feet of the Lord. So knowing that, serving the entire creation. So that is Pada Sevana. Archana is worship, ritualistic worship. Vandana is offering respect, a sense of gratitude in all our activities. That's Vandana. Dasya speaks of the attitude of a servant towards the Lord, that is servitude. Sakhya, friendship, that when our love develops, the fear factor falls off, then we feel just the way we can open ourselves up to the friend. So there is nothing to hide. I can be just open. I can just open up myself to the divine in the form of friendship. That's Sakhya. And Atmanivedana is surrender. That comes at last. So this 9-fold practices are the practices of the Vaidhi Bhakti. This is the preparatory bhakti, prescriptive bhakti. So of this, the Shravana, as we have already mentioned, the hearing, this we will take up for the discussion in today's class. So this, the first actual activity or process of bhakti is Shravana. So hearing about Ishvara, his pastime activities as the divine incarnation, his teachings, that's the Shravana. And it is a starting point from which all other 8 processes of bhakti, which we were speaking of just now, they all develop. First comes Shravana. From Shravana, the other 8 develops. And we will find in this entire Bhagavatam, Shrimad Bhagavatam is regarded as a sacred text in which the recorded narratives of Ishvara can be heard of. That it has been written for that purpose. That so that we can hear about the divine place, that the Lord incarnated himself by resorting to his Yoga Maya. He comes and sports as a human being. Why he does that? As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, that Lord, the Nitya, the one who is the absolute, he comes down to enact the divine play, the Leela. Why? So that holding on to the Leela, we can reach the Nitya. Leela dhore dhore nitya pochana. Very nicely he used to say, suppose you are drowned. You got drowned. And now to save you, someone throws a rope or a chain, and holding onto the each and every rung of the chain, I can save myself. I can come out of the water. So Sri Ramakrishna used to say, this chain, this each and every rung of the chain, each and every join of this connection of the chain, the joints of the chain, is just like the various divine plays of the Lord as it incarnation we find. So holding on to them, constantly thinking of them, we can develop the tremendous love for God. How it helps actually? Now, just to keep the mind in the name of the Lord is very difficult. We know that our mind is constantly scattered in so many things. And now just to gather up and just to, as our final, as we will find that in all our spiritual traditions, they speak of japa, to take the Lord's name. But it's very difficult. Why? Because my mind is so scattered. And now to just keep the mind in one name is very difficult. So Leela Dhyanam, the meditation on the divine play, the life and teachings of the divine incarnation, here plays a great role. What happens? That at the very beginning, I cannot keep the mind just only in the name. So I resort to the Leela, the divine play. It has a much broader bandwidth. So many activities it is speaking of. My mind can be engaged in so many things. Immediately it is not just have to be engaged only in the name of the Lord. I can think of all these divine plays enacted by the Lord as an incarnation. And that way I get a much broader bandwidth. I need not have to restrict my mind from sarvarthata, from distraction, immediately to ekagrata. It can still venture upon this divine play. We engaged. It has a definite bandwidth. But at the same time, there is some bounds. What is the bounds? I cannot go beyond that bound. That is, my mind is engaged with all those divine plays. It is no more engaged in the so-called worldly activities. So let's see how it helps. That from all these worldly activities, I try to bring back my mind by sublimating my thoughts. It's not by restricting, sublimating. All these various faculties, they still get the chance to play. But they are all limited within the divine play. And that's how, for a beginner, this Leela Dhyanam or listening to this divine play plays a great role in our spiritual evolution. So we will find that this is mentioned in the Bhagavatam itself. What it is saying? That in the Bhagavatam we find in the 12th cantos, in the 12th part, the 13th chapter, the 18th verse. What it is saying? Shrimad Bhagavatam Puranam Amalam Yat Vaishnavanang Priyam Yasmin Paramahansyam Ekam Amalam Jnanam Param Giyate Tatra Jnana Viraga Bhakti Sahitam Naishkarmyam Avishkritam Tat Srinvan Supathan Vicharana Paro Bhaktya Vimuchen Nara. So it is asserting that it can liberate you. It has such a tremendous potency. Just hearing. Nothing you have to do, just hear. What it is saying? That it is a spotless Purana. Why it is spotless? Because it is speaking of only of the divine play, nothing else. Anything related to the divine is pure. Amalam, Puranam Amalam. It is spotless. There is no trace of impurity in it. And it is most dear to the Vaishnavas. Yat Vaishnavanang Priyam. Why it is the favorite? Why it is so dear to the Vaishnavas? Because it describes the pure and supreme knowledge of the Paramahansas. Yasmin Paramahansyam Ekam Amalam Jnanam Param Giyate. What were these Paramahansas? Paramahansa. This term is very important. In our scriptures, they say there is a reference to this mythological bird, the great swan, Paramahansa, the supreme swan. What's that? That swan has a characteristic. If you mix water with the milk and give this diluted milk to drink, to give this swan this milk to drink, it has the capacity to drink only the milk and leave out the water. So what's the idea? It can take the essence and leave out the dross. So who is the Paramahansa? Who knows it is the Lord who has become the universe. In essence, it is the Lord and Lord alone. So he takes the essence. That what I see as this world, in essence, is the Lord. So I am not going to be enchanted by what I see in the form of this name and form, this panorama, this prapancha. That cannot delude me. I see the Lord in the creation. So that's how he is a Paramahansa. He can take the essence. He can leave out the dross. And it is these Paramahansas with whose interaction with the divine incarnations has been spoken of in this Bhagavatam. We find that how the saints, by leaving off all the distractions, can dedicate their life entirely to the devotion of the Lord and Lord alone. So when we read that, we ourselves, even unknowingly while reading, start developing those traits, those qualities. That itself becomes, just reading itself becomes sadhu sangha. It becomes a holy company. It's not possible always to get a holy company. But this type of scriptures, this Bhagavatam, that while reading it, that itself becomes a holy company. Because we are reading all this life, the teachings of the Paramahansas, their interaction with the divine. So that's why it's very dear to the Vaishnavas, because it describes the pure and supreme knowledge of the Paramahansas. And then this Bhagavatam reveals the means for becoming free from all secular work. That's what we were saying just now. Tatra Jnana Viraga Bhakti Sahitam Naishkarmyam Aviskatam. This Tatra Jnana, that I get the knowledge, and Viraga. Viraga means detachment. This knowledge and detachment, which is not dry, which is smeared with bhakti sahitam. And it can help me to get rid of secular activities. Naishkarmyam avishkritam. Does it mean renouncing the activities? No. As I see the God in each and every being, that Pada Sevanam that we were speaking of, in this entire creation is nothing but permeated by the Lord and Lord alone. As I see the divine everywhere. So what happens? Even my secular activities, the so-called secular activities, become spiritual. It's no more secular. Because throughout the day, whatever I am doing, as per my position in life, as per the job I am doing, as per the nature of my work, whatever I may be doing, I am interacting with the divine and divine alone. So that way, here this Naishkarmyam Avishkritam, that you discover that after all, there is no thing called secular activity. It is all the activities are actually worship. They are like archana, they are like vandana of the divine. Because constantly, if the entire creation is nothing but permeated by the divine, whatever I may be doing, I am actually interacting with the divine. Even in Bhagavad Gita, we find that idea. Yes, yat karoshi, yadasnashi, yat juhosi, tadasi yat, tat tapasvasi kontaya, tat kurushva madarpana. That whatever I may be doing, whether I am taking food, whether I am sleeping, whatever activities I am doing, I do it with a sense of as an offering to you, to the Lord, nothing else. So this is the idea of Naishkarmam Avishkritam. So throughout my day, in all my activities, seeing the divine, this divine, listening to this, the story of the Paramahansa, that trait I developed. The Paramahansas do the same thing. That throughout their life, knowing the essence, they are always interacting with the divine. When they are worshipping, that's the direct means of communicating with the divine. And when they are doing our other activities, then also seeing the Lord in each and every being, they are interacting with the divine. And I hear about that while reading the Bhagavatam. And hearing that, that's the trait I also develop. Tatra jnana viraga bhakti sahitam Naishkarmam Avishkritam. I discover from their life that how to have this Naishkarma Siddhi, how to get perfection in actionlessness, which doesn't mean getting rid of action. The self is always actionless. It is a witness of all the activities, what's going on. So it is there, always just Nishkarma. It is always actionless. So going through the life of all these Paramahansas, I discovered that. And tat srinvan supathan vicharanaparo bhaktya vimuchen nara. So anyone who seriously tries to understand Shrimad Bhagavatam, srinvan, by hearing, supathan, by reading it between the lines. If I say, why between the lines? If I read the word Naishkarma here itself, immediately if I take the literal meaning, it means to just stop all activities, sit down and just contemplate on the divine. It's not meaning that. It's not that of course that I should get rid of all my activities. I should have certain time throughout my day to forsake my activities and devote exclusively to my time for the Lord and Lord alone. That's okay. In the morning, in the evening, I do that. But throughout the day, I cannot do that. I have my family responsibilities. So then how to practice this Naishkarma? Still I can practice. If I can see the Lord in each and every being, then each and every activity, instead of remaining a secular activity, becomes an offering to the divine. So if you can read them between the lines, that is what's meant by supathan. Hearing it, reading its actual meaning, and then doing vichara, by cogitating on it, so that I have a much more clearer intellectual understanding. Even in Vedanta, the same thing they say, Shravana, Manana. After hearing, we have to cogitate upon it, so that all the misunderstandings falls off, all the gaps in the understanding falls off. I get a very firm intellectual conviction of what I read. That's why this vicharanaparo, I try to understand it in its true essence. Such a devotee, bhaktya, that itself can lead him to liberation. Vimuchen naraha. So that he becomes completely liberated. So that's the importance of Shravana, has been spoken of in Bhagavatam. So we will find that this Shravana, how it helps. Very nice. That there's an example in one of the Vaishnava Shastra, this example is there. That the coal and the diamond, both are nothing but carbon. If you go to its constituents, they are carbon. What makes the difference? It's just the orientation of these carbon atoms. The way they are oriented, that makes the difference. So when we are reading the Bhagavatam, what happens? We are doing as if it's something a passive activity. That how can a passive activity give some positive result? So here this passive activity, what it is doing, it is changing our orientation. When you are reading, you are just the way the iron filings, when it is placed in a magnetic field, its orientation gets changed. So here also, the moment I keep myself exposed in the form of hearing to this Bhagavatam, the scripture, what happens? Our mental orientation starts changing. The seeds of bhakti gets planted in our mind. So this Bhagavat is nothing other than the concentrated Shravana. And with full concentration, forgetting everything, I am just hearing it, composed so that the seeds of Bhakti Yoga can be planted in the mind of those who are seeking a relationship with Ishvara. It's just like the coal transforming into diamond. Both are carbon, yet the difference lies in their internal structure. Similarly, through Shravana or deep listening, one's worldly orientation shifts to the devotional level. The worldly orientation shifts. So it's just a shifting. This is the beauty of bhakti. And that brings about a spiritual transformation. So there is no question of forceful subjugation. It's just channelizing all your faculties towards God. So it is not subjugation, but sublimation. By changing your orientation, this renunciation comes naturally. So that's the thing, Shravana helps us to get spontaneous renunciation. So once the mind becomes attracted to the stories of all the divine incarnations of Krishna through Shravana, and in time it gets captivated by the love for him, it loses its attachment to the world. All this attachment, you need not have to force. They lose by itself. Their power gets weakened. They become pale in comparison to the love of the divine. The more the love of the divine grows, the more the other attachment naturally falls off. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, that as one proceeds towards the east, the west falls behind. I cannot push the west. If I have to avoid the west, I have to just move towards the east. The west automatically falls behind. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that in those days, that when all these soda drinks were not there, so what was considered as a very delicacy, as a drink, just a candy sugar, the diluted candy sugar was considered as a better drink compared to a drink prepared by the molasses. So he used to say, if once you have sipped, you have drunk this candy sugar syrup, will you ever again drink the molasses syrup? No, never. So you're immediately, when you taste something better, your love for something which is not that delicate, that falls off naturally. So here's Sri Ramakrishna is saying that here this renunciation is spontaneous. The love of God is qualitatively better than all other worldly love. So the more you develop love for God just by hearing, the other worldly attachment starts falling off naturally. It's a very spontaneous renunciation. So that's the beauty of this Shravana lies in this spontaneity. There is no special preparation needed. Even when one happens to hear this divine play of any divine incarnation, even by chance, there was no such intention. A person just out of curiosity went to some satsang going on, some congregation, spiritual congregation is going on. Out of curiosity, who goes there? Most probably he has no devotion. He just wanted to see that what's going on there, and hears just a few words, and suddenly, even without his knowing, he finds that the devotion is growing naturally. So that's the beauty of Shravana, that even when one happens to hear the divine play of a divine incarnation, by chance, devotion arises naturally, as has been affirmed in the Bhagavatam. that this wonderful verse we find in the first part, the 7th chapter, the 7th verse. What is this verse? Yasyang vai sruyamanayang Krishne parama purushe bhaktir utpadyate pumsa shoka moha bhayapaha. That if one somehow listens to Bhagavata even a little, one attains devotion for the Supreme Being, the Sri Krishna, and the individual will be released from misery, delusion and fear. The moment you develop that love, what happens? A spiritual portal, the spiritual dimension of our existence, the portal for the spiritual dimension of our existence opens up. Suddenly we become aware of the spiritual dimension of our existence. I am, God is, and our relationship is through eternity. How it helps us to get rid of misery, delusion, fear, shoka, moha, bhaya? Because now once I am aware that my relationship with the divine is eternal, then what happens? This life becomes just a passing phase. And all its struggles, its suffering becomes just temporary. It's something local. It's temporary. And thereby it cannot affect the entirety of my existence. It just affects a small part. In no way it can affect my entire being. Because I know that in essence I am the spirit and the soul of my soul is the Lord, and we are eternally in communion. Whether I know it or not, that's the fact. So as Sri Ramakrishna used to say, that the God is in each and every being, but to whom do I call a devotee, a bhakta? He says God is in every being, but who is a devotee? The one who is in him. God is in all of us, but are we in him? If we are in him, then we are the devotee. And once we are in him, we become aware of the spiritual dimension of our existence, then everything in life becomes insignificant. All our suffering, all our challenges, they become insignificant. And that gives that tremendous spiritual resilience. And how it has happened? Just by hearing. Yasyang vai sruyamanayang Krishne parama purushe bhaktir utpadyate pumsa shokha moha bhayapa. So just somehow by listening Bhagavatam, even a little, one attains devotion for the Supreme Being, and the individual will be released from misery, delusion and fear. So, but at the same time, when we are speaking of this liberation from this misery, delusion, fear, it's not the liberation just the way a Vedantin or a yogi wants. A yogi or a Vedantin, what he wants? That he has the conviction that he is the Atman, the pure consciousness. And he wants to get identified with that. But the Bhakta feels even that is also a type of selfishness. That I, just to be immersed in my own self is also, though it's a very high form of selfishness, but still it's a selfishness. As Swami Vivekananda used to say very nicely, an iron chain is also a chain, and a golden chain is also a chain. Both have the capacity to bind us. That somehow what actual real spirituality is, to get rid of the sense of ego, this I am, this limited body-mind complex. How to achieve that? By becoming aware of the divine, by relating to the divine constantly in all our activities of life. So, a devotee doesn't want his liberation because it means just attainment of the self. He wants to be always in devotional relationship with the divine. So that's why for him, even to attain the self, which is bereft of all its worldly attachments, to attain that is also a type of selfishness. So that's why in Vaishnava Shastra they say, Atma Rati Kama, Krishna Rati Prema. What is the difference between love and lust? Atma Rati, anything which gives me pleasure, that is lust. Everything which is for the sake of Krishna's pleasure, this for the pleasure of the divine, that is prema, that is love. So Atma Rati is Kama. There's anything, when I'm in our life, whatever we think as love is actually not love. all our relationships, we think I love others. But if we really try to find out, what I will find? That actually by loving others, I get pleasure. That pleasure is the motivation for loving others. So in a way, it's something like self-seeking. But when a devotee loves Krishna, there is no question of self-pleasure seeking. You may say, why? He attains that devotion, he loves God, he's feeling that love in his heart. Is he not enjoying? But at last, the supreme devotion speaks of something very wonderful. What's that? We'll find in the Bhagavatam that the gopis, finding Krishna happy, felt they are happy. Though they were in separation from the Lord, but for them, the Lord's happiness was the ultimate. There's a very nice such episode in Bhagavatam that once Narada wanted to know that who is the greatest devotee. He thought that the Lord will be indicating that Narada himself is the greatest devotee. But he told those simple gopis are the biggest devotees. How? Now, Bhagavan proved it to Narada that when suddenly one day Bhagavan said to Narada that I am having headache. And the cure is if I get the dust of the feet of a devotee and I smear it on my forehead, the headache will be gone. Immediately Narada just shrank in fear. How can I give the dust of my feet to the Lord? He is something to be worshipped. So immediately he shrank in fear. And then when he went out asking others, as Krishna directed him, just see if anyone else gives. No one was willing. At last, when he went to the gopis immediately, they said, how much dust do you want? They were ready to give the dust. There's a heap of dust. That go and give it to your Krishna so that his headache is gone. So that's the idea. I don't own my liberation. That just what you say, that to give the dust of my feet which will be smeared on the Lord's head, it will entail in my deterioration. It is a type of evil act, as that's what we generally feel. But the gopis are not in any way discouraged by that, because what Krishna has said, his headache will be gone. So his pleasure is our pleasure. We want nothing, but in whatever situation we may be, wherever we may be, we should just get the chance, the opportunity to serve the Lord. That's the only thing we want. So where the self-seeking is totally gone. So that's why the bhaktas give bhakti the highest position, even higher than mukti, the so-called liberation, where one is seeking the self, though it is very high, but still it is self-seeking. In the words of Swami Vivekananda, as we said, the golden chain is also iron chain is also a chain, the golden chain is also a chain. Both binds. Somehow that in a very refined form, self-seeking is still there. So that's why liberation is not the fact sought by the true bhaktas, who wish to be immersed in the thoughts of Krishna, rather than in Atman, a state of consciousness devoid of all objects, as per the goal of yoga. For a bhakta, seeking to remain immersed in Atman is a type of self-seeking, and hence is also a form of lust. That is also, they say, lust. Though it is very refined, but still it is lust. Remaining immersed in Krishna alone is bhakti. So we find this idea, even that's to be immersed in Atman and ought to be immersed in the love of God. Of these, bhakta always chooses the second. He doesn't want to be identified with the Atman. He wants to be always in loving relationship with the divine. In the words of Ramakrishna, a devotee doesn't want to become sugar. He wants to taste the sugar. If I become the sugar, I don't enjoy the taste of sugar. There should be a distinction between me and the sugar. That duality should be there so that I can enjoy the taste of sugar. A devotee wants that. He doesn't want to become sugar. He wants to enjoy the taste of sugar. So that's the thing. Bhagavata attributes that's why we'll find just to taste the sugar, the role of Shravana is very important there. By hearing, I develop this love for the divine. I enjoy the ecstasy of the divine love just by hearing. And that's why very high position has been given to Shravana in the Bhagavatam. In the fourth part of Bhagavatam, we find in the 20th chapter, the 24th verse, what it is saying? Nakamay natha tadapyaham kvachin nayatra yusmat charanambujasava mahattama antahridayat mukhachyuta vidhatsva karnayutam esha me varaha. Thus, my dear Lord, I therefore do not wish to have the benediction of merging into your existence. Na kamaya natha tad apyaham kachin. That tad apyaham kachin. That I don't want to be one with you. So then a benediction in which there is no existence of the nectarine beverage of your lotus feet. That you are, I am, and I can enjoy the devotion by, this charanambuja. There's a tradition that in the olden days, when there were no convents, the Guru used to come to the disciples' house after a long walk. So, to wash the feet, because he has came for walking such a long distance, his feet is full of dust. To wash the feet of the Guru was an act of service, was a seva. Charan seva. So, here also this charanambuja, what it means? The nectar means when I wash the feet of the Lord, that water is no more a polluted water. It is just the opposite. It's the nectar. So this is the idea. This poetical idea is there. We find in the Bhagavatam that I want to enjoy the nectar of the feet of the divine. What's the idea? That unless I am, the Lord is. The question of enjoying the nectar which ensues from anything which comes in touch with the divine. That becomes the nectar. I cannot enjoy that. So I just don't want to be one with you. I want to have that sense of separation so that I can relate to you through devotion by enjoying anything associated with you through devotion. So yatra yushmat charanambujasava. So I do not want that. Mahattama anta hridayat mukhachyuta. So your lotus feet, I want the benediction of at least 1 million years. That's the thing. That what he's saying, that how this Shravana is very important. That my 2 years are not sufficient. Vidhatsva karna ayutam. Ayutam means million. Let me have 1 million years so that with each year with all these years I can constantly listen to this divine play and divine play alone, this lila. So this is something there's again this idea. See what a so-called a yogi will want. He will want to shut his ears. That is all the so-called conversations or worldly conversations. I want to shut my ears. But the devotee doesn't want to shut his ears. He just wants to hear, change the subject, there's the object of his hearing. What is the object of his hearing now? He wants to hear only about this divine life, the divine play and the divine teachings. Nothing else. So that's why he's saying, bless me that I can have 1 million years, so that with all these years, throughout the day, through all my activities, I can hear about the divine and the divine alone. Sakarna ayutam. So I want the benediction of at least 1 million years. For thus I may be able to hear about the glories of your lotus feet. So Mahattama Antaridayat Mukhachyuta, which lotus feet from the mouths of your pure devotees. Mukha Achyut. This about your life, those who have experienced you through their meditation, through their spiritual communion with the divine, when they narrate those divine tales, so that becomes something like a nectar. So your words, your life, your teachings coming through the mouth of such devotees, Mukhachyuta, of those devotees, they become like this nectar. And to hearing that, may I have 1 million years so that I can be fully immersed in the thought of the divine and divine alone. So that's what the blessing a devotee is asking to the divine. It's actually one of the tales of this Prithvi, one of the kings. He is praying to the Lord in these words. So we find a similar idea narrated by Sri Ramakrishna in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Very interesting that he's saying that after Ravana was killed by Rama, not only Ravana, his entire family was killed by Rama and Lakshmana. And now to find out who all remains, Raman and Lakshmana was going through all this deserted palace. Everything was empty. Either people have died or the Rakshasas who were still alive, they ran away. So these deserted palaces, they were passing through, Raman and Lakshmana. And suddenly Lakshmana noticed an old lady, a very old lady. She has developed a hunchback, and she is trying her best to run away. And then Lakshmana was a bit surprised. Who is this? And this Rama told he is the mother of Ravana. She is Nikasha, the mother of Ravana. And she is running. And Lakshmana thought most probably because of fear of life, she is running. And Lakshmana said, just see that how the Maya works. That she has lost, she is old, she is totally now dejected because she has lost his children, son, his entire family, and still he has so much attachment to life that he is running out of fear. And Rama just had a serene smile in his face. He told, that's not the reason. Why not you go and ask her that why she is running, that apparently she has appeared to be so scared and running, that why she is so scared. And when Lakshmana at last approaches and asks, the answer Nikasha gives is something wonderful. What she says, that see, as I had the fortune enough to live such a long life, now I am old, I am tattered, I have jaragrastha, that decay has ensued. But still, I am blessed. Why I am blessed? That as I could live such a long life, I could see the divine play of Rama. That's why I want to live still longer. If I die now, this experience, this wonderful experience of relishing the divine play of Rama, that will come to an end. That's why I don't want to die. It's not because of my attachment to life. It is because of my love to enjoy the divine play of Rama that I want to live. Seeing that, just hearing that, then Lakshmana realized that what is the hidden truth behind this Nikasha's fear. It is actually the love to hear about the divine play of Rama. So that's the idea. The devotee doesn't want liberation. He doesn't want to get identified with the Atman. He wants to maintain that separation so that he can enjoy the play of the divine and relate to the divine through the devotion. And for that, that's why the Shravana is very, very given, the Shravana has been given so much of importance in the Bhakti tradition. So a Bhagavatam cannot comprehend anyone not becoming enchanted by Krishna. That once you hear him, the name Krishna itself means that the one who is constantly attracting us, Akarshana, the word Krishna came from Akarshana, is constantly dragging us towards him. If one hears about him, one naturally develops love for him. That's why in Bhagavatam it's mentioned that ko nirvrito hari kathasu rating na kuriyat, that who absorbed in hearing the narration of Hari could not possibly develop attraction for him. So it's a very simple thing. Sit down, listen. Have the patience just to listen to these divine narratives. And you will find that just with that passive action of like hearing, you're doing nothing active. With that, the love starts developing within your heart. So that much of importance has been given to Shravana in Shrimad Bhagavatam. So we will find thus that in the end, this entire Bhagavata is composed to provide an opportunity for Shravana. That's why it has been composed. That Vyasa knew that in Kali Yuga, where there is, in this age, when the people, to practice spirituality is almost impossible. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, that in Kolite Annagata Pran, we will find that our throughout the day is spent just to just to earn our bread. So much of, you will find that instead of getting more and more our leisure, we are so much grounded to earth through our work. More and more we are getting engaged. No free time. When to call on Lord. And that's what Sri Ramakrishna meant by Annagata Pran. Just to earn your bread, your entire energy is gone. So, in such an age, how can I think of all those practices of yoga which has been spoken of? It's almost impossible. So the simple thing, Shravana, whenever the time permits, just the way coming back from the work, we turn on the TV or we go to some social network. So instead of doing that my leisure is meant to hear about the narratives of the divine. If I can do that, that itself is sufficient. For that, Bhagavatam has been written for this age. That's why Vyasa has written, to give us the opportunity for this Shravana. So this a vivid and transformational encounter with Ishvara happens with that, which culminates in the love of God. In the Bhagavatam, that's what has been mentioned. Shrimad Bhagavate Mahamunikrite King Vapare Ishvara Sadyo Ridi Avarudhyate Atra Kritibhi Shusrubhi Tatkshanat. Susru, one who serves the divine just by hearing. That is the seva. Just the way we offer so many these items to the divine. There is no need for that. You can serve the Shusrubi, you can serve the Lord just by hearing. And then what happens? Sadhya Ridi Avarudhya. The Lord comes and gets as if encaged in your heart. In the cage of your heart, He gets arrested. Avarudhyate. There is as if no other way. The Lord is helpless. If you just hear, that's the language in Bhagavatam, so strong, that the Lord gets as if encaged in the cage of your heart. Avarudhyate. Sadhyo. Immediately. Not that it will take time. Just you hear, the moment you develop devotion, you start feeling the presence of the Lord in your heart. So, Sadhyo Ridi Avarudhyate. So this beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by this great sage Vyasa, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? That's why this has been extolled. There is no need. Why? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, because of that knowledge, the Lord gets established, gets encaged in the cage of your heart. Avarudhyate is in the Ridi. So and then what it says in the Bhagavatam, we find another wonderful sloka. Nigama kalpataro galitang phalam. This is full of this poetry in this. What is this Bhagavatam? The nature of this Bhagavatam? Nigama kalpotara. Means Nigama is all the Vedas. So from this Vedas, this kalpataru, if I consider as the entire Vedas as a wish-fulfilling tree, the extract of that, galitang phalam, from the essence of that, the fruit which we get of that tree. That fruit that also has came out from the mouth of the Sukha, the most pure soul, Shukadeva. Sukha mukhat amrita drava sangyuktam. So it has got being smeared with the nectar of the pure soul of like Shukadeva. What it speaks of? The words of the divine coming through the mouth of a pure devotee. It's just like the nectar. So one who can drink that pivata bhagavatam rasamalayam muhu aso rasika bhuvi bhavuka, who have even developed little love, he will understand the test of it. In life, even if a little love is there, this is very important, that if one is dry, he has no sense of love, for him to develop love for the divine is very difficult. So that's why even worldly love sometimes is desired. Because once you have that feeling of love, a little channelizing of it directed towards the divine becomes devotion. There's a nice incident in the life of Swami Vivekananda. He was a young Naren. He was yet to become a monk. They were visiting Ramakrishna at Dakshineshwar, and another brother monk. He later became Swami Turiyananda. His name was Hari. Now Hari Maharaj, as a young, became an orphan. He's lost his mother and father. So he was brought up by his elder brother. His elder brother was much elder to him. And to him, his mother was the wife of the elder brother. So the sister-in-law, she was like the mother. So she brought her up. So now, as Hari Maharaj was orphan and he was had a very austere nature, he apparently appeared to be very dry. So one day Naren asked him, have you ever loved anyone in this life? Have you loved anyone? And Hari Maharaj immediately told us, as a young Hari, yes. So this is my sister-in-law. She is just like mother to me. I do love her. And not until you are saved. That unless you have that feeling of love in your heart, how will you channelize it to the divine? You have never felt that love. So that's the idea of this bhuvi bhavuka, rasika, the one who has tested that love. For him it becomes very easy. He just have to channelize it to the divine. The ones who have tested that love, now you channelize it, and that becomes, there is no need to restrict it. Just channelize it. And how to do that? Just listen to the words of the divine, to the life of the divine, from the mouth of the one, who has already developed love for God by leading a pure love of devotion. From his mouth, when you hear, these words become just like nectar, and that the one who has even a little love in his heart, they only can test it and we get enchanted by it. So what's the quality? Just you must know what love is. In this life, who doesn't know? As a young child, that we got that unconditional love of the mother, the father. So this love is something is ingrained in our heart. Who doesn't know? So in a way, the Bhagavatam is saying there is no such hard-hearted fellow who has not experienced love, even to certain extent. Trace of love they must have experienced, and if he has experienced, he is eligible to hear about the stories of the divine which has been written in this Bhagavatam. Just hear it and you develop that love. So without devotion, spiritual life becomes very dry, as is evident from the mental state of Vyasa. We will find that Vyasa himself was going through that state. That he, before he composed Bhagavatam is the last scripture that he has composed. Before that, he has done some tremendous, he has a tremendous contribution. He has a tremendous contribution in the spiritual domain. That he divided the Vedas into 4 Vedas, one Veda into 4 Vedas. He was composed all the 18 Puranas. He composed the Mahabharata. He composed the Brahma Sutras. And he wrote a commentary on the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. So it's a stupendous work. But after doing all those things, he was still despondent. He was feeling very dry. That in spite of all the spiritual achievements, spiritual attainments he got through his spiritual practices, still he was feeling dry. And he never knew why. And then suddenly he had an encounter with Narada, the sage Narada. And Narada, when he told Narada that, see, in spite of all my spiritual attainments, somehow I feel very despondent, very dry. And then Narada diagnosed the reason behind this Vyasa's despondency. What he is saying in Bhagavatam we find, Bhavata anudita prayang yasho Bhagavata amalam yena eva aso natushyeta manye tat darshanam khilam. That you have written so many things, but you have never in any way described the divine, the love of the divine. You have never described the place of the divine and tried to relate to the divine through love. So that's why you feel the despondent. So what he's saying, the spotless glories of the Supreme Lord. Amalam Yasho Bhagavata. That's what's the idea. Yasho Bhagavata Amalam. The spotless glories of the divine has almost not been spoken of. Anudita. You haven't spoken of. Anudita Prayam, by you. Bhavata, by you. So I consider as imperfect all these philosophies. Manye tat darshanam khilam. Akhila means something vast, khila means limited. They are all limited, which fail to please the Lord. Yena eva asau natushyata. So in Bhakti Shastra, the idea is the Lord has created the universe. He was one, he became many, so that he can relate with his creation with love. He is full of joy, full of rasa, and to experience that joy, he has to have this duality. He has become many so that he can interact with the world through that love. To experience the love which is the essence of his existence, the joy. So that's why when we love the divine, that's the thing which pleases the Lord, because that was the intention of his creation. So that's why here it is mentioned that we fail to please the Lord unless we are trying to relate to the Lord through devotion. So there's a nice story even in the Bible. We always relate to that the story of the prodigal child. That if Lord really wanted that we should relate to him through love, he wants to experience that love, then why he has created us in such a way that we don't feel attracted towards him. We go away from him. Why? So there's a nice story, the story of the prodigal child in the Bible. That a rich man had 2 sons. The elder son was obedient. They're like the Nitya Siddha. He's obedient. He's always obedient to his father. The young wanted to be free. He just claimed his inheritance. He said, you give me the share of my inheritance. I want to be free from you. Seeing the younger son so much insisting, the father at last yielded. He gave him the share of his inheritance, the property. And he left his father. But he was irresponsible. In a short time, he lost all his wealth. He became a pauper. And now the thought of his father came. Why? Because he found that he cannot exist by himself. He cannot sustain. So now he thought of his father, but at the same time he was full of fear, apprehension, that my father is angry with me most probably. If I go back, he will reject me because I have disobeyed him. I have just left him, got separated from him, disobeyed him. So he must be angry with me. But as there is no other way, with full fear he is returning. And from a distance the father sees this younger son, and he's so much delighted. He runs to meet the son, embraces him, brings him back home. And in the evening, he invites the entire village and gives a huge feast to the villagers to celebrate the son's homecoming. So this is a nice story, the story of the prodigal child. So the Lord has created this universe and he wants to relate through love. But why he has created it in such a way that we don't love him always? Because if we were made to love him, we would be just like machines. If we have no choice, then we are just like machines. Just the way I cannot love an artificial intelligence, however it may be sophisticated. I know it's just a machine, it has been programmed. Suppose I have an artificial intelligence which has been programmed to have unconditional love towards me. Can I relate in love with that? No. I know it's a machine. It has been programmed. So that's why God, when he created us, he gave us the choice. Otherwise, it's just like loving a machine. You cannot love. He gave us the choice. You can reciprocate the love of the divine or may not. But at the same time, he made the world in such a way that you can never get happiness out of it. At last, we have to turn around. And the Lord is waiting, eternally waiting, when we turn around. So like that prodigal child, he is waiting to experience the joy of the son's homecoming. That's what pleases the Lord. So here also that idea is there. This through devotion, only you can please the Lord. All the other philosophies and scriptures, which doesn't speak of relating to the divine through that devotion, that doesn't please the Lord. And you have not done that. You have, after doing so much stupendous work, you have never tried to relate the yasha, the glories of the divine, which is pure, amalam, which is bereft of all impurities. You have never done that. Once you do that, then this despondency will go. That's we find consequently that Narada prescribed him. What he prescribed? Atho mahabhaga bhavan amoghadrik shuchisrava satyarato dhritavrata urukramasya akhila bandha muktaye samadhina anusmara tad vicheshtitam. So he's saying, through contemplation, go into the samadhi. From there, experience the Saguna Brahman, the Brahman with attributes, with all his divine qualities, with all his incarnations, his divine plays. Just from samadhi, from your deep contemplation, you bring them forth in your memory, and that's the thing you write it down as this Bhagavatam, as a scripture. And then only you will find that ultimate fulfillment once you can relate to the divine through this devotion by narrating all those divine plays. So that's the thing which we find Narada is prescribing. It's almost comparable to the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. When the Master Mahashaya, the Sri M, the one who has written the Gospel, he had a terrific memory. Whenever he used to go to Ramakrishna, and whatever conversations used to go on throughout the day, all the activity and conversations, he will minutely hear everything. After coming back, through meditation, he will recollect all of them and jot it down. That's how the entire Gospel came. And that's the thing we find Narada is prescribing Vyasa, that through meditation, try to bring forth in your memory all the divine plays, and that you write it down for the welfare of the humankind. And that's the prescription we are finding is being mentioned. So now, to sum it up, what we find at Shravana, what it does is the very first step. Just by hearing, vivid visualization starts, as has been stated in the Bhagavatam, in the 11th part, the 30th chapter, the 3rd sloka, what it says, Karna avishtam na sarati tato yata satam atma lagnam. Entering through the ears, that form. So just by seeing, even in Vaishnava Sastra in Bengali, very nicely it has been mentioned, that those who were with the Lord, they were of course the devotees, but those who have not seen the Lord, just by hearing his divine plays has developed love. They are greater. The words entering through the ear turns out into love for God. You haven't seen him. Just think, just by hearing you develop love. Isn't it a much greater love, greater this quality than those who have seen him, was with him? So, Kaner Bhitor Diya Morome Probeshi Logo. They have entered through the ears and have got established in your heart as the love. So that's the Karna Avishtam, Na Sarati, Tato Yata Satam Atma Langnam. Entering through the ears, that form becomes imprinted on the minds of the saints. Satam, the saints. And it never escapes. Once it gets established, it is there, never to lose. That's the beauty of the divine treasure. This Kharche nahi koi, chor na leve, dina dina varata savaya. How nicely it has been spoken of by Mirabai. That it is such a treasure which never gets expended. Kharche nahi koi. Chor na leve. No one can steal it from you. And the more you hear, the more you get enchanted by these divine tales, the more you develop love. Dina dina varata savayo. So this is the treasure. Payoji maine Rama Ratana Dhana Payo. This is the treasure which I have achieved, I have attained. So that's this thing which has been spoken of. So once the form manifests in the mind, then in turn one can better associate with the qualities associated with Krishna, demonstrated through the past times, that resulting in vivid visualization. That itself becomes a very deep, engrossed meditation. Very easy way of concentrating your mind through this divine Leela. That helps us with a quite substantial bandwidth to get rid of other things with which we started our discussion. My mind remains engaged not only in just one word. It has the scope to traverse through various activities of the divine life of a divine incarnation. So it has a scope to move about, but it has certain bounds. It cannot go to the worldly thoughts anymore because you have developed love for this. And that's how Shravana helps us to grow spiritually. It's the very first thing. Though it appears to be a passive act, but this external passivity speaks of internal awakening. Tremendous activities going on within. Apparently it appears as passive. I am just sitting and listening. But something is going on within. A change is happening. Orientation is changing. Devotion is developing. Ecstatic love is developing. And that's how the Shravana is the first and the foremost important thing of the preparatory bhakti, as has been enunciated in the Bhagavatam. So with this, we conclude our discussion today. We will continue with the other 8 these practices of the Vaidhi Bhakti, preparatory bhakti, one by one in the succeeding classes. So with this, we conclude our discussion today. Thank you all. Namaskars.